A tape measure is a basic tool that any DIYer needs in their toolbox, but not only do you need to have it in your toolbox, you need to know how to use it. So let me go over some basic features on this very standard Stanley ProLock 25-foot tape measure. Arguably one of the most common tape measures on the market. It's one I've been using for 10 years. So we'll review the features, how to use those features, and most importantly, how to read a tape measure, because that is not necessarily intuitive, especially if you are a new homeowner or just getting started in DIY. Then, since I need to replace this Stanley, it has a little wear and tear on it, I went looking, and good Lord, there's a ton of options out there. So I bought a bunch of different tape measures. We'll look at their features and compare everything from a Kobalt at $15 to a DeWalt at $33. And from a DIY perspective, are any of these new features worth it, and are they worth the money? So let's jump into it. So the first item we'll touch on is just the overall tape measure hook design itself. Now this can be confusing because it seems like even with a new tape measure, maybe there's some slop in the design, but that's not true. That is per design. And why that is, it's so your tape measure is accurate whether you're taking an exterior, an outside measurement. So maybe you're measuring to this mark from this edge of the 2x4 to this mark. So that's how you get your exterior measurement. Or you can take an interior measurement with a hook will then push in. So that is per design. If this did not move back and forth like that and it was set in position, then you'd have accuracy on one type of measurement, let's say your inside type of measurement, but then when you went to an outside or an exterior measurement, you would have error that would be equivalent to the thickness of that hook. There's some specialty tape measures which we'll take a look at in a bit, and you'll see just how much movement that tape measure has, and that's because this hook is so thick. So next feature would be the slot on the end of the hook. Now that is made to perfectly fit on the head of a nail. So then if you're working by yourself, you can easily secure the hook, go out your distance, maybe it's windy outside, and you have no issue taking your measurements, and it securely holds. Now also, most hooks will have a design where they could be used as a scribe. You can measure, let's say, 5 inches from the edge, and maybe you didn't have your pencil handy. You push in the hook and then just use that as a simple scribe to make your mark for reference later on in your cut. So something that can be a little intimidating when you're just getting started is when you're taking measurements and it's a fraction of an inch, quickly understanding what fraction that is. So instead of focusing in on this unlabeled tape, I put a representative spacing and fractions of an inch line. This would represent 1 inch on your tape measure. Now the length of the tick mark will represent if it's a half, the next shortest is quarters, the next shortest is eighths, and the next shortest is 1/16 of an inch. One thing you will notice is in fractions you have a numerator over a denominator. So in the numerator, you will never see an even number. And why is that? Because here, instead of counting up your 16ths, if your measurement was taken at this mark, 1/16, 2/16, well, you would simplify that down by dividing the numerator and denominator by 2. That would give you 1 on the numerator and 8 on the denominator. So thus you would use 1/8 opposed to 2/16. So you should never give anybody a dimension that has a even number in the numerator, because it can be simplified down to either eighths, quarters, or halves, depending on what you're working with. Hopefully that makes sense, but with most things, practice makes perfect, and you just need to put in the reps to start getting more comfortable and quicker with identifying those fractions of an inch. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. But next up in the video, I'm going to run through some of the features on these 7 tape measures behind me. These are all currently available in the home improvement stores, and they range from $15 all the way up to $33. So you can make an informed decision on what tape measure is right for your projects. Now I'm going to go through some of these tape measures so you guys can see if some of the newer features or different types of tape measures will fit your needs. And then I'll give my recommendation at the end, but let me know down in the comments, what is your go-to tape measure and why? But when you let me know, say DIY or pro, so I know your point of view and where you're coming from. Always appreciate your guys' feedback, and it really helps the channel as we continue to move forward. Now, first up, and this is going to go with pricing, is your Kobalt 25-foot magnetic. Now, most of you know Kobalt is a native brand to Lowe's, so you're only going to find this at Lowe's, and it's $15. Some of the key features, and I won't go through all of those, is if that last segment kind of intimidated you guys with fractions, this is the only tape measure that I have here where we have fractions built in. Not to say any of these brands don't have tape measures that have that, but Kobalt builds it right in for your reference, and I think that is nice for many DIYers. It's also dual-sided, so it has measurements on both sides of the tape, and it has a magnet with a little larger hook, so you could hook things on the side, not just on the bottom. So some nice features, especially for $15. Now, I will link in the description, there is a YouTube channel called Project Farm, and he actually did a full review, which he always does. He does a great job of testing these out. Everything from durability test to just functionality and features. And I think Kobalt came in number 4 spot at $15. So that is something to be noted. Now, this next example from Swanson is a little more of an example of a specialty tape. I believe it is more tailored towards plumbers because it has this hook at the end that is handy and fits on pipe. So you could easily get measurements and not have a standard hook which would slip off that. Now, right away, I would say this is definitely not a DIY type of tape, but it does have the labels on the bottom, which actually I didn't notice before. So that is an advantage, but I would not recommend this, even though it comes in $18. Just interesting. It does have magnets on the front and that very specialized hook design. Let me know what you guys think of this. I think it's a little gimmicky. I don't think it's that handy. Then coming in at $20, you have the Contractor TS by Come Along, which I think I'm mispronouncing that name. I'm sure you guys will let me know. It's getting into the wider blades. So a lot of the more expensive tapes out there have the wider blade. It does have a feature that I like that you'll see on the Milwaukee as well, where you can use your finger to hold the blade and slow it down, opposed to using the lock brake lever here. So I do like that feature. I think it is kind of handy, and it does have dual-sided. So for $20, it feels like a pretty solid tape, and it does have the hook design with the magnet. It's not going to be too effective at top hooking. You'll see some of these other hooks coming up actually have a much wider hook and more versatility. All right, continue to kind of hammer through these just so you guys have an idea of what's on the market. The Fat Max. The Fat Max, again, is a wider blade, so you have more standout, or what's called reach, which is very handy when you're working by yourself, so you can hook something that is 8, 10, 12, 14 feet away. It has a nice lock here that has multiple different configurations. You can set it down where it's a break, and then you can just momentarily press it to retract it, or you can just do standard. So that is a nice little feature. Now, Stanley came out with this monster hook. These bigger hooks are pretty handy when you want to catch something on the side and take a measurement, which is nice. Now, how practical for DIYers? I guess you could argue that. Probably a little bit more for a pro. But this is actually removable. So if you wanted to take this off, you could. I just don't love the storage, which stores here. I just think you're gonna lose it. So if you want a very wide hook, you can get this, and I would just leave that on, hoping that it doesn't get damaged over time. So $25, this is getting in the higher range of Stanley. Stanley obviously has a complete range going all the way down to prices that are more competitive with that first Kobalt that we saw. All right, so now we're stepping it up into the little higher grades. Lufkin I really don't have much experience with. I'd say they have an interesting hook design. It's supposed to be durable with this shock force, and you can kind of see the impact case that goes around it. Again, for DIYers, we're probably not putting these things to the max in terms of what they're gonna go through. They take a little different approach at very boldly marking the 1 foot mark. but it is getting in the higher ranges at 25, no magnet on that hook. And then there were two. These are obviously very common brands, especially for pros, but how high are we getting here? 30 bucks for the Milwaukee. The Milwaukee has a very nice finger brake here. While you're using it, you can just use that. The blade itself is very wide, has a nice protective coating on it, and you can see you have two sides here with even architectural scale. So they really are going towards more of a pro market. Now you can see the actual blade on the Milwaukee has a very aggressive concave structure. That's to give it the most standout, like we talked about before, where you could extend this out. I think this one has 14 or 15 feet of standout before it would snap. For DIYers, that's probably a little bit more of a party trick than something you're going to use on a normal basis. So for 30 bucks, this guy is very nice. It has the magnet on the end because this is specifically the magnet design. And the hook is a little more standard. I don't think it is that great. And then the last guy coming at $33. To be honest, for most DIYers, this is probably well above what you should be paying. But if we refer back to Project Farm's test, I think the DeWalt stood out head and shoulders above the rest. So if you're looking for something super durable that you can use a lot, I do like this hook. It's very large hook. It's very easy to grab things on the side and securely measure them. It is only one-sided, that should be noted, but it is a it just feels very durable. It has that extra coating up to 9 inches, which some of the others did have as well. Has a very nice lock and brake here that's easy to use. Very nice belt clip. So those are just some of the features that have come out, let's say, since my last Stanley Power Lock, which is beat up. Has a little bit of damage where it's starting to fatigue there on the belt clip. But if I was going to go with one, I would probably just go with another Stanley. Personally, because I'm doing a little bit more work, I would step up to the Stanley Fat Max. I do like this. I don't love this detachable hook. I would probably just keep that on all the time. But for most DIYers, I would say it's going to be hard to beat the Kobalt. This has a lot of features that I actually think help DIYers, the very pronounced fractions here that would help if you're just getting started. And it has pretty much all the major features that you want. It has the magnet. I don't think that's super useful, but for 15 bucks, I think the Kobalt is a great option. All right, so that's it. Now you know the basics, how to read a tape measure, and some of the options that are on the market. Again, I think for the DIYer, going low with the $15 Kobalt, I think makes a lot of sense. But let me know in the comments, what is your go-to tape measure? I want to do a poll soon on the YouTube channel, but I can only include 5 options, so your guys' comments really help me narrow that down. Now, before you take off, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as we have multiple videos coming out per week to help you with repairs and improvements around your house. And we'll catch you on the next one. Take care.